it so often presents as a people concern or problem. I think that's because at the end of the day, people are responsible for making things happen in the organization. Like I don't know, Chet, he got us here, but I don't know if he's the guy that can get us there. It's like, well, wait, what are you actually asking him to do? What's the marketing organization? What is he or she actually got in the tank that they can burn? And so you said, yeah, learning about the organization. So talk to me about the things that a company typically needs to learn, because a lot of things we usually start in ICP. Ideal customer profile, but I sense what you're talking about is more involved in that.
Yeah, I think there's 4 or 5 areas that I think people need to learn. There's the ICP, there's your positioning and your messaging and refining that. There are what demand gen channels are going to work for you, but by and large, when I think about a learning organization from a marketing perspective, I won't claim this is my own idea. It comes down to, with early go-to-market, it's a function of repeatability. And Bruce Cleveland, who wrote the book, The Traction Gap, he calls this minimal viable repeatability, or MVP, which is he identifies as a missing stage at the corporate level or the company level. And there's a gentleman named Matt Callaghan, who I heard at the Marketing Cybersecurity Conference speak back in December of last year. He calls this, he works with sales teams, and he calls this the Vanguard-led stage. And essentially, he said that typically, as a startup burns through its early stages, it'll go through 3 VPs of sales before it gets to a Series C. And the third one is going to be the best one, because the first 2 end up paying the price for not reaching repeatability. And I think that same concept exists for marketing. It's this idea that marketing has to have a mirror of that sales mentality, or the company mentality of MVP or MVR. And so for me, I call it marketing MVR, or minimal viable repeatability. And I look for 4 signals. The first one is your marketing and your demand generation repeatable? And by that, I mean, have you got 1 or 2 marketing channels that you've identified that are producing qualified pipeline, not just leads and MQLs, but qualified pipeline that's closing, and it's doing so in a second item that I look for is in a predictable way. Meaning, if I pour more money into that channel or those channels, I understand the conversion rates by channel. I understand the opportunity close rate by channel, the deal velocity by channel. And I can understand that if I put that money into those channels, I'm going to get a commensurate return from those channels pretty consistently. The third thing I look for is business fit. In other words, are the channels that you're using, do they fit the deal economics for your business? And here you're looking at the average deal size by channel that is being produced, the acquisition cost, or CAC and CAC payback by channel, and then the LTV to CAC ratio is sometimes used as well to understand the dynamics of the channels that you're using. So do they fit your business? You don't want a channel that's going to be too expensive if you scale it for the deal economics. And then the fourth is, I like to see if the channels that you're using are non-founder developed. In other words, is the marketing team and the channels that you're using repeatable without the founder? Just in the same way that you want the sales team to be able to sell repeatably without the founder being involved, which signals that the sales has reached a certain level of repeatability. I think the same is true for marketing. You don't want to be relying on the founder's personal network or their super charisma to bring deals in every time and build your pipeline.
As you said, find the stuff that's working. What's the stuff that just clearly isn't that you can cut? And then what would you use that resource to apply to either scale what's working or try something new? And it's very hard. I think we went through a phase where marketing would have a little bit of a slush fund a few years ago to try some of these new things. Then things got very tight. And now with AI, I think there's a new opportunity, and you might be kind of coating it with a different coat of paint to try some of this stuff. But you can get a resource multiplier with AI that you couldn't by having to explain why you need to go hire an agency or something to try some of these new things. And taking that portfolio approach, that structural portfolio approach, I mean, I love kind of the engineering thinking, the financial thinking behind that as well.
Yeah, I think AI is impacting not only marketing teams, but it's also impacting the buyer journey. I think it's really putting more power. Yeah, sure. I think it's really putting more power into the hands of the buyer. And it's moving the buyer journey upstream in a way. You know, I looked at the Sixth Sense did some B2B buyer research. I think it was published by Kerry Cunningham late last year. And they demonstrated or found that buyers are roughly 2/3, 65%, I think is the number they put on it through their buyer journey before they ever contact a vendor. So, you know, by that point, they've done their research. They've put together a short list. They've probably identified a favorite on their short list. And they did all of that without you in the room.
That's right.
And
you had no idea. You had no idea.
Yeah. You weren't a part of the process at all.
Yeah.
But you've got to win that part of the journey. You've got to be able, you can't see it, but you've got to be able to win it when they're out there trying to educate themselves. How do you get on that short list? Because if you're not, you're in trouble. The thing that bothered me the most of that research, or this, I guess the scariest thing from that research for sales and marketing teams, was B2B buyers, according to them, select a favorite vendor before they engage with all the people on their short list. And that pre-contact favorite, you know what they found? That pre-contact favorite wins the deal 80% of the time. That means if you're not the favorite going into that deal, you've got a 20% chance of winning the deal. And if you're not on the short list, you're not on the short list. So AI is just making it so easy for companies to use LLMs to educate themselves, to learn about your category, to do research, to build the short list and to build their favorite. And now they can easily compare vendors, from the data LLMs have available and build that favorite. Whereas used to, I think perhaps they had to talk to the sales teams to learn more about the product and to figure out what criteria they should use and how you stack up against your competitors. And that's just no longer the case anymore.